think we grew up in an odd mix of, on one hand, our parents came out of the 60s, so we grew up with, I hope I die before I get old. Nobody really was considered viable rock-wise past 30-ish. So we were sort of on the edge of that on one hand, but we also came out of the indie world, which said, don't sell out, don't do the man's bidding. And at some point, just either the economics or just the shifting tide of the business, at some point you have to do somebody's bidding. Whether it's a couple times we did corporate gigs, which we hated. It was like, there's really that uneasy mix now, which at the time seemed a lot more important. Now, of course, all those boundaries are gone. Everybody's doing anything to make money because the business is so bad. But it was an odd place to be, of trying to resolve, well, how do I feel strongly about what I'm doing artistically, but at the same time try to make it work in this mixture. For me, when I said I want my band back, it was like I realized that I'd taken the bestest, proudest thing I'd ever done and sort of chucked it out the window and tried to sort of build a new castle to live in. And in doing so, took away every advantage of the one that I built, and fundamentally asked myself to sort of invent some completely new persona when Pumpkins was meant to include all the personas. And then everything I did became counter to what I'd done. So even like my solo album, which was very electronic focused, people talked to me as if I'd never done any kind of electronic music, and I would say, well, biggest song Pumpkins ever did was actually very electronic. And they would look at me and scratch their head and say, well, I don't understand. It's like I had to sort of explain myself against the Titanic symbol of what the band represented, even if it wasn't realistic. So I just thought, well, I just want to put my Superman costume back on, or my Zero outfit or whatever, and just go back to being that guy in a way that I was at peace with.
I had advanced knowledge of it, so I don't think it shocked me as it shocked the world. But I felt that it was a real turning point for my life. I felt like it was an opportunity for Billy and I to kind of re-solidify our relationship, which never really kind of went away. I mean, we were always friends and partners through both of our solo projects. So it really made musical sense. It made kind of spiritual sense, and it was really just kind of a way to solidify it in the world's eyes that we were going to make music again, and just kind of make a statement that we're not going to make excuses. We're just going to do what we do. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't, we're still going to do it.
No matter what we said or did, no one really truly believed we were going to do it. It was always this sort of hesitant kind of like, oh, that's nice. I'll believe it when I see it. It's like the GNR thing, like, sure you're going to make an album, sure you're going to come back, sure it's going to be good. It's just a weird feeling. It's almost like you're no longer the people that did that or something. It's like you're disconnected from your own legacy, which is a strong word, but I mean, you don't even have your own accomplishment because you chucked it out the window or something. You're no longer entitled to it or something. It's a weird place to be.
There was a lot of times where we were scratching our head, looking at each other, going, man, can we even do this? I think at some point, maybe a month and a half in, we started turning a corner, and the songs really started reflecting kind of how we were feeling, as opposed to going back and trying to recapture some type of fire. We started rekindling a new fire. It's not so much the notes we play. I think notes are notes. It's the way you feel about the notes when you play them that makes the notes kind of special. Like I try to approach the drums like Elvin Jones or would approach a McCoy Tyner piano solo, to try to support it with compassion, like you would listen to a friend's problem on a telephone call. I think our friendship really has ingrained itself into the music, and I think that's what really gives us the upper hand, is the emotion.
We pretty much ended up producing the record ourselves, which is not what we wanted. I think we got so insular that it was really hard to let anybody in. Yeah, Roy, more than anybody, I think, was the person we actually listened to. I think we really didn't listen to anybody else very well. It's like the old thing, you can take the short way or you can take the long road, And we decided to take the long road. And not everybody understands the long road these days with Pro Tools, because we recorded only to tape. We didn't use any computers on the album. The fact that it's just the two of us, so the tracking takes a lot longer than it would be with the band because I'm obviously doing, all the overdubbing. What you see in music now is there's no conviction. It's sort of everybody's making McDonald's commercials. There's no core conviction to even take that chance on that guitar solo because God forbid some radio programmer somewhere won't play the record. Roy doesn't give a fuck. He really doesn't. I mean, there are people who pretend they don't give a fuck, and there are people who don't give a fuck. And Roy is somebody who really doesn't give a fuck. Roy was really the only person on the record, and he was there at the beginning, he was there in the middle, and he was there at the end, who really sort of auteured the record in a way just by his mere presence, where nobody else did. And that's just because Roy is just not intimidated by anything or anybody, because he's seen it all, done it all, owned a castle.
Right.
Anybody who's owned a castle has my vote. I don't know what it was. It's just one day it was like the word struck me and I thought, okay, that feels right. There's a collection of essays by Herman Bloch, who I don't really know as a writer, but I was turned on in searching for Zeitgeist, that he'd written this essay, Geist and Zeitgeist. I think he wrote it sort of in the 1920s, and it was about art versus kitsch and how art should be the natural representation of the world, and kitsch is basically art meant to satisfy. And I thought, well, we've never been in a worse time than that, American Idol and on. It's like, what can I do for you? Which is really counterintuitive to what an artist is supposed to do, which is to say, oh, I see this other thing and you don't see it yet. And just everything with, the rise of a fascist world order meets, nobody has privacy and everybody's on my side. There's some sort of collision there that I thought, wow, we're going to look back on this time and it'll have a name. We don't have a name for it yet, but we are in that. It was the Roaring '20s and the me '70s. This is going to have a name. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but you can feel that there's something going on.
What's continuously amusing about playing the old songs is just the complete kind of primal instinct behind what we did back then, how our conviction was so much stronger than our intuition. We did things that I won't say a lot of people can't do, but certainly a lot of people were afraid to do. And it gives me a really deep appreciation for just how much we went there and how unashamedly we pursued our craft and continue to do.
It's really surprisingly fun. That's not a word you can normally associate with us, but it's fun. Well, when we started really thinking about it 2 years ago, we had different choices. One choice, of course, is the reunion money, and everybody just gets together, but nobody talks and hates each other. And we were very open to the idea of our former band members coming in, but only under the circumstance of love of music, love of playing, new music. So if that criteria was not going to be there, then they weren't going to be involved. And I think they've shown publicly their lack of interest. Pumpkins is more of an idea of like, okay, there's a spirit and there's a voicing there, and people most identify me as the singer and the songwriter. But moving forward, it really has to be about what the music asks of us to facilitate. I don't want to get in that thing of the passive aggressive, I'd rather be at home with my kids, but you expect me to do a certain thing and I'm just going to do it, but I'm going to hate it, and so that's going to translate to the audience that we really don't want to. Never again. Whatever that is, it's like we won't go through that again. We will never step on stage with people who don't want to be there. So we're in an interesting position in that we don't want to overly ego identify more than it already is, because it can't be about that anymore. We'll never be able to go back to what it once was. Even if it was the original members, you can't go back to that spot. Everybody's different. So barring the four original people on stage, or maybe Melissa Offenbar playing bass or something, if there's not that sort of inherent legitimacy, at least in the public's eyes, then the next best thing for us is to make it about the legitimacy of what we're trying to do. So if that means us and 27 people in the choir, then that's what we'll do. And I think Pink Floyd is a good example of that. When Syd Barrett left the band, they just kind of said, okay, well, we have to move on. Joy Division, same thing. When Ian Curtis died, it's like you just have to pick up the pieces and go from where you're at and move on. And you can't live in the past because it's done. It's just dead. You know, there's some songs we're playing now I haven't played 13 years or something like that. I'm the type of person where I can't lie about it. If I was hating, I would tell him inside, I fucking hate this. I know I got to play these songs, but I fucking hate this. I really am loving it. I really love being in a great place to represent the music and knowing that the energy coming from the stage is all positively identified. We want to be here. We want to play this music. We appreciate that you want to hear this music, and even if you don't, we can respect why. We're out of that old idea of what it means to play good. It's like ultimately, I think people want to see the band enjoying their trip.
Yeah.
And that struck me over time, especially being away from it. It's like, and thinking about coming back, like, what do people want to see? They want to see us enjoy our trip. They don't want to see us bummed out by our trip. Like,
right.
Oh, we are up here and we don't really want to be in, oh, here's the song we don't want to play.
Right.
They really want to see you go, yeah, this is cool.